Dr. Bettinghouse here. I'm so excited about this interview that we're going to be having here with Mr. Quint Redmond, who is the founder of a wonderful organization called Agriburbia, okay? And he's been in this business for a long time. He's a landscape architect. He's also very interested in all aspects of farming. He's located right here in Colorado, but he's done lots of work around the country in different states, and I think maybe even internationally. So I am so thrilled to have him. I really, if you have any questions or make any comments during this, please do so, and maybe we can discuss them. So let's invite Mr. Redmond. Hey, Quint, how are you?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Get the technology down.
It's always a challenge, but
I know. I love it, though. Yeah. I am so excited to have you here. I think it's just, it's breathtaking what you're doing. So will you please tell us how you got started in this business and just anything you want to tell us about your life and your life's work, okay?
Sure. Well, I actually was smart enough to say I do at the right time and be smart for about 15 minutes and married a wonderful woman who's also my business partner 28 years ago or whatever. So that helps, right? But the short story really is that I was a geologist the first time around, and actually her name's Jen, and she was a biologist, and then we met in graduate school. So both of us have a master's in urban and regional planning. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, I got a master's in landscape architecture. We actually started from scratch a design firm 30 some years ago. And because we're natural scientists or, biologists and geologists, we always had a natural leaning, right? We always liked sustainability, and we were very fortunate that most of our design clients agreed with us. So we got to do a lot of design work that was sustainable and kind of much more planet focused as well as people focused. And then the magic kind of happened in about 2000 or 2001 or 2, and a gentleman came to us, and he just bought 600 acres. And this is actually in Colorado. We, like, as you mentioned in your intro, we have work all over the world now, but we started the very first project, and it was in northern Colorado, 600 acres. And he said, "Oh, I want to do a golf course community and everything." And I just went, "Oh, there's like 30 golf courses within spitting distance of this land." And I said, "Where's the most valuable land per capita in the country?" And he said, "I think you're going to tell me." And I said, "Yeah, it's Napa and Sonoma." And the reason is because that ground is productive, right? It's because it's producing value, it's producing ag value. It's also something that's producing something that humans associate with, like wine and grapes. But I mean, the idea is that it's not corn and wheat and things that you grind up, right? It's edible food. And so ultimately we convinced him to put orchards and vineyards in the project. And that was in 06 or 07 by the time we got all that done and got it all approved. Unfortunately, it didn't get built. He went broke during the Great Recession. But for us, it was the launching pad, and nobody's really ever asked us to do anything except food projects since that. So when you design food into a subdivision or a development, it's not just pretty, right? Like it adds value, it creates jobs both for young people, and one of our biggest clients are 55 plus communities, right? Because everybody wants to retire and live in a townhome that's like a block and a half from an orchard. It's a natural, visceral thing. And this is for functional medicine doctors and practitioners. This goes to the very core of how it works, right? Like food is the most important part, not just from a chemical reaction standpoint, but also a mental and a thoughtful and cultural and social aspect. So anyway, that was many, many years ago. We actually have gone to the point now where we actually have, I haven't signed the contract yet, but we have a developer client who the whole subdivision is dedicated to diabetics. So everything that's planted around you, everything that's growing, all the stuff, all the infrastructure is to support your health. It's the other term for that, by the way, is paradise. Like, we don't know why people have to leave their home to go somewhere else to be in paradise, but it's just the way our world has gotten designed. So we're very lucky. So our two kind of key things is that we're very good at the real estate part, and we're very good at the agricultural part.
Well,
so that's kind of a brief intro.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I've had a dream for many years of having a healing center. I actually have it designed in my mind, and a part of it is organic farming around it. Okay, now I haven't been able to realize my dream, but people like you are taking those kind of dreams that many of us probably have had and putting them into action. So
we're working on two different things that are, one has a medical office building, but it's surrounded by recreation and physical activity and food. And the other one is going to be a surgical center. That's basically all the campus is food. And so you recuperate, you go to your surgery, and then you recuperate in a cabana or in a cabin that's, surrounded by food. I mean, it's the best healing thing you can do, right? So
absolutely. I'm so glad I found you. I think we were going to talk. You've got some slides to show us about some of your work. Maybe we should do that now.
Okay, sure. I'm going to share here, and let me see, share screen, share. And all right, can everybody see that?
Nope, there you go.
Good. So once we started taking food seriously on growing, part of our goal is to have production as close to consumption as possible. And there's a whole host of reasons. One is it's the lightest footprint on the planet, right? You don't have to transport it. You don't have to cool it. You don't have to do all this stuff. Like, literally, food is outside the door of everyone, right? When you're in a development that has food in it. So that's one goal. The other was to figure out a way to make farmers from people that aren't necessarily farmers, right? So this building that you see on the screen is called a farm kit. We call it a farm kit because basically you can buy it, build it, we build it for you, and you live upstairs. You can live, or we have a doctor that's going to put her physician assistant in the building. So you live upstairs, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, loft apartment or whatever, but the bottom floor of it drains and has fire protection, so it's commercial. And actually, you can treat people. We have a dentist that's going to put one of these on 2 acres of mint and make her own toothpaste for clients. I mean, that's all agriculture. That's all, how do we better, help ourselves to natural ingredients and things like that. Anyway, so that's the building, and we have farm-based daycare and a day school. We have a yoga instructor. We have an occupational therapy group that's going to use one of these, and not only to figure out how to have the people that need the physical therapy in the farm and in the rows, but also for mental, like PTSD and all kinds of things that you need respite from, right? And so going out and being in the field and picking is potentially one of the, it's just such a fundamental thing to being human. So anyway, so that's one view of it. I can show you a couple others. We also have some patents that will help to grow. So this is what we call lollipop trellis. It's called compact intensive farming, but basically to help grow and help use technology. This is all low water, low energy. These are geothermally heated, so it's a much lighter footprint on the planet, right? Less resource and more food. And if this is all close to where you're going to consume it, then you don't even have fossil fuel for transportation, right? And things like that. So we have hospitals that are going to build farms outside the hospital using this technology. And then, let's see, I think there you go. And then the last kind of thing is now we're working on the secondary patent. As you can see, these have photovoltaic panels on the surface. So not only do they generate calories, metabolic energy for humans, but they'll also generate their own electrical energy to run themselves. And actually, they'll generate enough even to run the other parts of the farm and the building. So I think that's pretty much.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, you have any?
Wouldn't that be fun to have a medical practice and your patients? And here's from a medical standpoint, I don't know how many of your listeners are practitioners. Probably quite a few of them. But one of the things that the dentist has talked about with us as we're preparing to do this for her, one of the problems is people only come to her every 6 months to get their teeth cleaned or when they have a toothache. And if she's operating on a broader platform of health and things like that, people will come every other week to get food and talk to her. And, oh, by the way, yeah, my tooth hurts or this. But now the integration for the doctors and the patients, or the medical practitioner and the patient, is not relegated to when you're injured or sick. It's all the time, right?
Right.
It's, and so it improves the whole practice relationship, not just like literally nutrition, but how the whole thing works.
Oh, yeah, that is so amazing. Well, let me take this off for a minute because I want to get serious. Okay, so is there anything like this in the Denver area?
Well, we're working on several of them. We're working on one. They're not out of the ground yet, but one down near Lone Tree in Centennial. That's one set of doctors we have. We have another project in Brighton, which is probably a year or so from building the first ones, but that's a much larger development even. So it's a 300-acre development, but all of the floodplains all have farm kits and orchards and vineyards. And that's where the doctors are going to basically build a building that's a combination of medical office building, charter school, recreation, and food. And that even has a green roof. So the trellis is on the roof of the building. So you can be in the charter school or go to your doctor's office and walk out and get food on the top of the building, and then go back in and enjoy it and learn about it. Like half of our nutrition problem, or half of the problems that functional medicine, at least my limited understanding of it, is seeking to, all of the chronic diseases, all the lifestyle diseases are fundamentally, nutrition based or whatever. But people don't know, and they don't know how to cook, and they don't know, anymore or whatever. So putting the food next to where they are active is a critical thing. If you go to your doctor and the doctor says, come on out on the porch here and let's talk about what a ripe tomato really looks like. And this is what's, and there's just this whole scenario of integrating patients into food and into their life again, right?
I think people have lost their relationship with food. If they go to the grocery store, pick up a box and add some water to it, microwave it, and they think they're having food. And you are exactly right that food is our medicine, okay? Because it has so many nutrients that our body needs. Now, one of the things that I'm so impressed with is that you're looking at this organically, I'm assuming, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And somebody asked a question when I said I was going to be interviewing today. It's, what do you think climate change is having on, what kind of impact on our food supply?
It's pretty interesting. So one of the reasons we're coming up with the patents and the different ways to grow things is that people have migrated to having year-round diets. And we think there's a certain amount of that's okay, but a certain amount of it is both regional, both temporal and spatial, right? Both what time of year it is that you're eating what you're eating, but also where you're eating. So like, we don't think anything of being in North Dakota and eating oranges because that's what that's the way it's evolved now. Well, maybe that's not such a great idea. And maybe with climate change, it's not going to be possible, right? So what we set about doing is coming up with a way that within certain parameters and good judgment, you can grow most of the things we're typically, used to eating from a well, I mean, it actually works for proteins too. That's kind of a whole nother step. Yeah. But just talking about fruits and veggies, you can grow most of the things that you want most of the year. And then here's a really key part that talks about the farm kit building. That's designed so that if you eat fresh tomatoes in July or August, and they're really, really good for you, if you take all of those and you put them in a can, put them in a ball jar naturally at that scale, they're just as good to eat, in December. And they don't travel, and they haven't salted them, and you haven't done all these other things, horrible things that national brands do, right? The other part of that is people are actively involved in raising their own food, and they become they have to be involved, and they literally think about their diet year round. Like, what am I going to eat in December? They don't just assume that they go to King Soopers or Kroger or wherever and pick up the same thing because it happens to be there. That's part of what's both killing the planet, right? Like transporting food all over, and then also what it takes to grow food, both heat-wise and chemical-wise, at any given time, anywhere on the planet, it's zapping the planet's health. So we have a very intense eye on climate change and figuring out how to cope with it from a human nutrition standpoint. We spend almost at least some part of every day talking about it.
Oh, it's so logical. It makes sense. Okay. I grew up in a small town in Southeast Georgia, and we had fresh fruits and veggies all the time, straight from either our garden or from a local farm, and now it's like you go to the grocery store and you can only get maybe 4 or 5 different kind of vegetables.
Right.
I never heard of broccoli when I was growing up because it was a northern vegetable, I guess.
Right.
So this work is so critical, Quint. I can't emphasize it enough, and maybe we can meet again and talk more about it. But what would you? Okay, tell me about your architectural design. Are you building? You're building eco-friendly buildings also.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
The building structure. Do you actually build you said they're farm kits or whatever? Do you manage the building of these buildings?
Yeah. Actually, so as a company, we decided that food would be an architectural mission, right? Like a built environment mission. If we can figure out how to change the supply chains and make food grow as close to consumption as possible and as fresh as possible or whatever, that takes infrastructure. So how do we go about that? So that's when we came up with the building it's a live work building for food and medicine. I can be a chiropractor on a farm. I can be a yoga instructor or whatever on a farm. And then the patents and the trellis and all the other stuff, we made that so that it's pretty cool, actually. Like, your farm comes on your phone. It tells you what to do and how to pick and when to pick and when things are ripe and all that. So we like technology. We don't like technology only for technology's sake. Yeah. So interestingly enough, we have a 55 plus community, and one of the women that lives there came to us, and we were showing the trellis, and we were showing. Her first comment was, "You need to have wine glass holders on the trellis," right? It's a social thing. Yeah. Going out in the evening to prune and do things in the cool of the evening is something that they want to do in their retirement. The other part of that, though, is they don't want, or they can't, be bent over in the sun, at 3 p.m. or whatever. So how do we kind of make that happen? So there are some ways to robotically pick and do things or whatever. The goal is to fit the community where it's planted, where we put it. And we do as much or little work as we need. So we have ones that we're working on where we'll build it and we won't ever, we just check on it, but the community will take it over. And then we have ones that we are putting in that will run for a lifetime, right? They'll come and we'll know how they work and whatever. So we design it, we build it, and we'll operate it for you.
It's a dream. It's a dream come true. So everybody out there, I hope you're paying attention. You're going to have to start talking to your doctors about food, and we have to educate doctors. Unfortunately, so many doctors just tell their patient, "Oh, well, just go eat healthy food," and without any guidance. Okay,
so here's a quick story about that. We have a very close doctor that actually works out at Anschutz, and he's curing people's diabetic wounds with shakes, right, with fresh food and everything. I mean, stunningly good. And I said, so why don't you just tell them to go shop in the produce section, or why don't you tell them to eat healthy? He goes, you do not understand the problem. This is a training. It's an immersion issue, right? Like if you walk through the farm to go see your doctor, it's an entirely different experience, right? And if you go to your doctor a couple of times a week and you pick fresh stuff and you learn how it works, it becomes part of your being. Right? And that's how people get healthy. Not by saying if you eat, 1 tomato a week, or if you do, and if you immerse yourself or become immersed because your doctor is part of the plan of nutrition. He was fascinated when he saw what we were doing. He goes, "Oh my God, like this is like the most incredible thing." So yeah, it's an immersion. It's a learning immersion thing. Yeah.
So how would one in a city like this find enough property? Is there any problem with zoning, getting something like this zoned?
Well, so we do all that for you. And I would say there used to be, and COVID changed all that, right? So even though COVID as a disease and a pandemic is like functionally a disaster, right? Like we've lost an enormous amount of people. The general population kind of woke up and said, wow, my health is more important. And it put a priority on it, and priority on food and all that. So now most of the cities that we work in across the country, but particularly here in Colorado, they want food. In fact, actually, we do studies for cities now to see how much food is consumed in the city versus how much is produced. And almost all the cities are trying to figure out how to encourage producing more food in the city. So it's interesting because all the zoning regulations that are out there, basically we zoned ourselves into sterility, right? Like,
Yep.
We basically zoned everything so you can't do anything fun, like food production or whatever. But the minute we walk in the door, the planners for the city and the mayor and everybody, they just like open arms. They just tell us what we need to do to change the rules, right? So that we can live in paradise. When I'm out on the lecture circuit, I always have this standing challenge. And I tell people in the audience, I say, if anybody can find a picture of paradise, like that's either themed paradise or called paradise or whatever, that shows buildings, I'll buy them dinner, right? Paradise is a plant-based idea. Paradise is in the garden, right?
Yeah, right.
It's about food and chlorophyll, right? And things that grow. And so, once we get past that, the cities are all wanting to do it. Now, sometimes it takes time to do that, right? It doesn't happen the next day. They have to convince other people in the city. But let me show you. Can I share my screen one more time?
Oh yeah, please do.
Because I think let me find the picture first here so that I can show it. But this is 3 stories Here, let me, is my screen shared?
Yep.
So this picture, this is actually my wife, Jen, and this is a well building. There's a thing called the Well Institute that certifies building for air quality and water quality and all that. But one of the things for well building is food and food. And so obviously we can't. This is over by Sloan's Lake. It's called Lake House, and we can't feed everybody in the building. But every week we have harvests. We teach. We have a chef that takes stuff that comes off the farm. But we're going to end up growing 2,000 pounds of food from this. This is the deck. In fact, actually, the swimming pool 3 stories up is right over here. So there's a farm in the building. And it just changes how everybody looks at it. And now all these people that live there, not only they're looking for food from this little farm, but when they go out, they're looking for really good food. And it's basically, we've had several people say, wow, they bought their condo in this building because of the views and the mountain. And it's turned out the farm is by far the best part of the building, right? So you can take food a long way in a very, very small space.
Yeah, I know. That's so amazing. I can't believe it. So, gosh, are there any other places, I mean, in Denver that are doing this?
There's not really. So we farmed for many years to learn to figure out the patents and everything. But we're just kind of spooling up again. The downturn, the Great Recession was pretty hard on us. We're in the real estate, we are developers. Like that kind of makes everybody freak out at first because it has such a negative connotation, but it doesn't have to, right? It takes development to do food the way we're doing. You have to have drip irrigation, and you need access to it, and you need to put it in between people's homes and townhomes and up on the building or whatever. So that skill of ours in the real estate and development world is incredibly important to the health and to changing the health of the country, right? Because this is kind of what you're talking about. If you don't know how to go convince the city to approve your project with food in it, it won't happen. And so our blessing is we know that part of it, we know the agricultural part of it, and to a certain extent we know the health. We're not doctors, but we're pretty, my wife is a health guru, farmer, or whatever, and so we know a lot about how food affects health. That's when I ran into the functional medicine idea or read about it, I'm like, this is us, right? Like this is the medical analogy to Agriburbia, right? These are the sets of doctors and medical practitioners that I don't need to explain it to. They already understand nutrition and health as a key component. So
yeah, that, one of the things I had one of our Jefferson County commissioners on, Leslie Dahlkamper, a month or so ago, and I'm going to share this with her. Be sure she sees it.
Oh, sure.
Because she told me that there were like several hundred organic farms just in Jefferson County.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to bring it to the forefront.
Yes.
As you were talking about how we use Mother Earth, that we have paved over so much of our land, and it's like putting asphalt and concrete over areas and building skyscrapers. Yeah. It just almost smothers the earth.
Yes. Well, and it doesn't have to. In other words, you can do it very well. I mean, we need pavement and we need transportation and things, but our goal is to not start with that idea. We basically, as a design firm, I don't know how many. This gets a little bit kind of in the weeds, but probably most of your audience will appreciate it. We started with Maslow's triangle. We said, if you're going to build a development or you're going to build something, let's make it fit human needs, right? So water is first, right? And then food is second, and then shelter, right? Like you can only go a day or two without water. You can go a week without food. And you can go quite a while, actually, probably until it freezes without shelter if you have to. And then if you start with that, and that's how we think about it, right? Like we don't just smash as many houses as you possibly can in. We say, well, let's have this many houses and see if we can get 50% of the food for those houses from that same piece of land. And they go, oh, wow. Like that's a different idea. And then what's really interesting is once you approach it that way, then all the higher pieces of the triangle and self-actualization, there's nothing like having a farm next door if you have teenage kids, right?
Oh.
Like they don't, instead of just sitting in the corner, with their thumbs, we're going to evolve because we'll have giant thumbs because that's all kids do. But if you have an orchard, if you have an acre or two orchard next door, you send them over there because you need them to help pick and help prune and do things. And by the way, they really learn a lot from that. Like they become doctors because they know about the biology, or they become, horticulturists or whatever. So, I'm not against programmers and I'm not against technology. I like my cell phone or my smartphone. But the reality is, smartphone 25, it's already outstripped our capability to do that. So what we need to do is concentrate on food and the quality of food, going forward. Sorry, that kind of rambled. But.
Yeah, it sounds. How many employees or contractors do you have?
No, we're very small. Okay. I mean, it's still in its infancy or whatever. And business has changed a lot. At one time, we were larger and had 30 so employees or whatever. But fundamentally, there's a core of about 8 of us that are partners that are kind of scattered around both in Colorado and California and all the way back east in Richmond, Virginia or whatever. There are people that, pun intended, kind of came to us organically, and they have different expertise, engineers and real estate people or whatever. But we hire people and we hire crews and we train them. And like you say, we've done a lot of work in school districts. And so, like I say, when we need to do that, we go and find education people and hire them for the job. And so it's a little bit different work environment. So we have a pretty big footprint, but we're a pretty small actual company.
Well, how would people get in touch with you?
Well, unfortunately, we're in the middle of refurbishing our website. Hopefully that doesn't last too much longer. You can actually go to agriburbia.com and there is an info button. And but most of the pages are, being, they say coming soon. But if you actually.
Oh, Tom, you misspelled it.
Oh, that's, yeah. You just go to agriburbia.com, or you can email me at Redmond, QREDMOND @agriburbia.com.
Agriburbia.
Agriburbia, AGRIBURBIA, agriburbia.com.
Okay, we'll get that corrected.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so you came up with a wonderful name. I love it. There you go, Agriburbia. Okay.
Agriburbia.com. Yep, there you go.
Okay, so as we close out here, is there anything you would like to say to the people that are either watching this live or will watch it later? What is your message, your vision, your dream, your inspiration for people?
So I think there's one of the things we run into quite a bit is a notion that's a 21st century notion about specialization, right? I am a doctor, so that's the only thing I can do, right? And I spend every waking moment being a doctor, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't have time for anything else. And I beg to disagree. And I literally, it's an interesting thing. So my wife and I raised 2 teenage boys. They're both, one's almost about going to college. The other's already playing football in college or whatever. We ran a multi-million-dollar design business, and we farmed every year and raised, 500,000 pounds of produce over the time or whatever. And that has to do with the desire to do it. We don't do a lot of other things, but I think that folks that see the farm kid and go, oh, I could never do that. I could never be a chiropractor, have my chiropractic practice on a farm. Who would do all the farming? And I'm like, well, that's why we're inventing the technology, but that's part of it. You take your clients out there and you learn how to do it or whatever, and food becomes part of your life. right? And a purveyor of food. So don't be afraid. I guess the point is, don't be afraid of the idea that you can do other things, including produce food as part of your career, as part of your practice. It's really not that hard.
Well, you know what? I've been thinking about this for probably almost 30 years. So I happened to stumble upon the little seminar you did through the Institute of Functional Medicine for some reason. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but we would definitely stay in touch with you because
for sure.
this just, I don't know, makes my heart just want to burst wide open. I can almost feel the lettuce in my fingers. I can see the squash. I can smell the tomatoes. And you know, my father used to go out in the fields and pick the dirt up, and he would smell it. I'd say, Papa, what are you doing? He said, honey, I'm a man of the earth, and you know, and he got his hands. He was an onion expert. So anyway, we've got to meet again, but I cannot begin to thank you enough, Quint, for taking some time to spend with the people on this group. And we will be sure that lots of people get to see this recording if they're at work or they forgot to sign in. And I will share it with our Jefferson County Commissioner because I'm very interested in this, okay?
For sure. I'll call anytime. And any of your audience that would be interested, they can email me or contact me or whatever. That's the goal, is to get it out there.
Okay, well, we're going to do our part to help you, okay?
All right, very good. It's my pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. See you, everyone.